Bonjour à tous.
Good morning.
Ce mercredi,
This Wednesday, we received a delivery of over 400,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. This is our largest delivery to date. Next week, we expect to receive even more, nearly 500,000. By the end of March, we are on track to receive 6 million doses in total of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. And by September, we will have at least 84 million doses. This is more than enough to vaccinate all Canadians.
we're now in the ramp-up phase of our vaccine plan. Hundreds of thousands of doses arriving each week means hundreds of thousands more people protected from COVID-19. That's what I'm focused on. You, your family, and your community. Every Canadian who wants a vaccine will have one by the end of September. We're working with provinces and territories. We're working with companies from around the world, and we're working with our partners and allies. Earlier today, I joined the G7 leaders meeting. It was great to see the renewed energy and commitment to work together to tackle big issues. We talked about our shared challenges like climate change, the global economy, and the defense of human rights, democracy, and our shared values. We also had a very productive conversation about the global recovery and response to this pandemic. And of course, we talked about vaccines.
With regard to vaccines, Canada is working with other countries on the COVAX initiative. This initiative is a partnership. The wealthy countries are investing in the initiative to obtain doses for their own population. At the same time, they are providing doses to low and middle income countries. In other words, this initiative is a means for all of us to increase our supply of vaccines here in Canada while ensuring that no one is left behind. Today, I can confirm that our total investment in the COVAX facility and the ACT accelerator is now $940 million. Canada has and will continue to be one of the main international donors in these multilateral efforts to beat COVID-19. I want to highlight the contribution of other countries that are taking part, including the United States, which has just joined this initiative as well. By working together, we can beat this pandemic.
I also discussed where we are in vaccines with the premiers at our 27th First Ministers meeting last night. We have shared an updated vaccine delivery schedule with the provinces and territories so that they're ready to roll out almost 1.5 million doses over the next 3 weeks. Vaccines are my top priority. I know premiers feel the same.
During the vaccination campaign, we will continue to do everything possible to control the spread of COVID-19. With regard to vaccinations, I spoke to the premiers of the provinces and territories so that we can ensure we can administer the vaccines as quickly as they are received. For testing, millions of rapid tests have been sent to the provinces and territories. We will, in particular, work in partnership with the private sector on testing. Furthermore, the federal government is leading by example. We are accelerating testing in federal workplaces.
It's a tough virus to beat, but I know it's no match for Canadian teamwork and innovation. Just look at the results we're already seeing from our partnership with the CDL Rapid Screening Consortium to roll out tests to workplaces. 26 pilot sites, 12 employers across the country, and more than 5,000 screening tests done so far. Already, they've caught positive cases. That means that people who otherwise might not have known were able to take the right steps to protect themselves, their families, and their coworkers. We have to use every tool in the toolbox to keep people safe, because we're not out of the woods yet. As Dr. Tam and Dr. New outlined earlier today, what provinces, cities, and mostly Canadians have done over the past few weeks has worked. Cases are down, hospitalizations are down, the number of deaths is down. But here's the thing. Variants are real and they're already here. So we have to keep taking strong public health measures. And remember, even with vaccines, we need to do everything we can to protect vulnerable populations like our seniors in long-term care. Otherwise, we could see a third wave that is even worse than the second or the first. I know that's not the news you want to hear, but we will get through this. I'm focused on testing, vaccines, and public health measures. The premiers and I spoke last night about not opening up too fast. And Canadians, you know what we need to keep doing, all of us. We need to keep focusing on those measures that keep us and our loved ones safe, like wearing a mask, washing your hands, keeping your distance, using the COVID Alert app, and avoiding gatherings. Together, we have the power to keep bending the curve and prevent these variants from taking hold. Beating this pandemic and keeping you and your family safe will always be our top priority. But let's not forget that there are other challenges that haven't disappeared because of this crisis. In the spring, people took to the streets across the country to raise their voices against systemic racism. Whether it was on the front lawn of Parliament Hill or in small towns and big cities across the country, I saw you, I heard you, and I agree. It is past time for a change. All Canadians must have confidence that laws are there to protect them, not harm them. Far too often, though, that's just not the case. It's a fact that a decade of failed policies by the previous government disproportionately hurt Indigenous peoples, Black Canadians, and other racialized communities across the country. Laws that discriminate must be changed. Rules that don't work need to be fixed. So that's exactly what we're doing. Yesterday, we introduced Bill C-22 to make our justice system more just. This is another step forward to create a system that is fair, effective, and keeps all Canadians safe. What our communities need is a justice system that punishes criminals and makes sure they go to jail so they can't put others in danger. What we don't need is a system that targets racialized people because of systemic discrimination. What we don't need is a system that sends people to prison because they struggle with addiction, or a system that punishes young Black people for being Black, Indigenous, young people for being Black, Indigenous, or racialized. We've heard from both communities and law enforcement that treatment and support is a better approach in many cases. Bill C-22 will prioritize that while keeping communities safe. We're also investing in diversion programs to increase the availability of viable, effective alternatives to criminal charges. C'est un fait.
It's a fact that failed policies put in place by the previous government for a decade disproportionately hurt Indigenous peoples, Black Canadians, and other racialized communities across the country. The time for change is now. We all want fair legislation that helps to ensure the safety of our communities, and that is exactly the goal of Bill C-22. Today, I also want to talk to you about our two official languages. They're one of the great treasures of our country. They unite us, and they are also a symbol of our diversity. The creation of the Official Languages Act now goes back over 50 years. Since then, many things have changed, and more concrete measures must be implemented to protect our beautiful French language, including in Quebec. Our government is proposing targeted measures to promote French throughout the country. This includes better access to French immersion classes and measures to protect French as the language at work in federally regulated companies in Quebec and in regions with a strong Francophone presence across the country. There will also be more support provided to Canadians in learning their second language. Furthermore, we want to require all justices appointed to the Supreme Court to be bilingual. We will support minority language community institutions and protect the rights of official language minorities. A federal government has never gone so far to protect French, and I want to highlight the leadership of Minister Joly that she has shown for the past 6 years now.
Covered a lot of ground today. But from vaccines to rapid testing to the justice system, my focus always stays the same. You, your family, and your community. In the spring, we created the CERB to help you keep food on the table and a roof over your head. In the fall, we extended programs like the wage subsidy and introduced new measures like the sickness benefit. Well, this crisis isn't over. Neither is our support for everyone. And on that front, I have some important news to share. To begin with, we are extending the Canada Recovery Benefit and the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit by 12 weeks. That makes the new maximum you can claim 38 weeks in total. If you need support while you look for a job, or if you have to stay home to take care of your family, these benefits will continue to be there for you. We're also extending the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit from the current 2 weeks to a new total of 4 weeks. No one should be going to work sick right now. It's that simple. And finally, we are increasing the help available under regular EI claims to 50 weeks in total, meaning 24 more weeks that you can use if you need it. Les temps sont durs.
Times are hard, and we will be here to help you as long as necessary. Earlier this week, I received a letter from Laura in Quebec. She plays for the Red and Gold at the University of Laval soccer team, and Laura told me how difficult it was for her team and her to remain motivated since there were no more matches or training because of COVID-19. Laura, I know you can't wait to get back on the field and to experience the joy and pride that you and your teammates have playing together or even just practicing before and after class. Spring is coming, the snow is going to melt, and the soccer fields will reappear from under the snow. I want to tell you and your team not to give up. You are not alone. We are here for you. We will be here to support you, and together we will get through this.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now turn to the phones for questions from media. One question, one follow-up. Over to you, operator.
Thank you. Merci. First question, Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN. Line open.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. On Bill C-22, it was introduced yesterday to eliminate some mandatory minimum penalties. There are critics out there saying that it's not enough and it's a weak response to a huge injustice in the legal system. So what would you say to those people? Because they're saying that it doesn't even meet the MMIWG calls to action, calls to action, or the TRC calls to justice.
The step we took yesterday is a significant step forward in making our justice system more just. We know that certain measures disproportionately affect Indigenous, Black Canadians, racialized Canadians. We have the numbers and the stats to prove it. We need to address systemic discrimination and racism as we committed to. There are always more things we need to do, but this represents a big and significant step forward in fixing what is wrong with our justice system that, because of systemic discrimination, continues to disproportionately punish Black and Indigenous peoples in ways that is simply unacceptable. You point out, well, Jamie, there's more to do, and we will keep working on this. But what we put forward yesterday is a big and significant step forward to making things fairer for everyone.
Follow-up, Jimmy?
Yeah, thanks. Minister Lebeddy's statement yesterday says that minimum sentencing doesn't work. Kim Pate sent out a statement on how minimum sentencing ties the hands of judges, to consider things like systemic racism and individual circumstances for people who've led lives of abuse and trauma. So Why is the government not considering just getting rid of all minimum sentencing? Why do they continue to tie the hands of judges like this?
On one end of things, I think Canadians can understand that on crimes like first-degree murder, it's important to have mandatory minimums and minimum sentencing. That is simply understood. But in many cases, data has clearly shown that mandatory minimums disproportionately penalize racialized individuals, including racialized youth. We know that we need to move forward on making our justice system more fair, and that's exactly what we're doing. We have, based on data and evidence, taken significant steps to improve our justice system, to remove mandatory minimums from the areas in which the overrepresentation of racialized and Indigenous Canadians are significantly high, but at the same time, we will continue to move forward. We need a justice system that keeps Canadians safe, that punishes criminals, but doesn't punish people for simply being racialized or Indigenous. That's why these measures are significant, and we will continue to move forward with them.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Bill Curry, the Globe and Mail. Line open.
Thanks, and good afternoon. On vaccines, President Macron is calling on wealthy countries to provide up to 5% of their current vaccine supply, which is current, not future supply, to countries in Africa and the developing world. Is that something that Canada is going to support?
In our G7 call this morning, there was an excellent discussion about the responsibility that we all have to ensure that vaccines are getting out to the developing world, the world's most vulnerable. We recognize that there need to be vaccines that are WHO approved, that are safe and effective. And that's why COVAX is so important in getting out there, and why we're so pleased to see the stepping up of investments by countries like the United States to contribute to COVAX and the ACT Accelerator. At the same time, we recognize that even as we vaccinate our most vulnerable populations in Canada and in our own countries, there is a need to accelerate the vaccination, particularly of vulnerable peoples around the world. And the G7 is committed to looking at ways to do just that, not just by donating money to COVAX, but by looking at allocations of vaccines in a way that is going to make a difference as quickly as possible. Nous reconnaissons.
We recognize that this is a pandemic that will not end until everyone around the world has been vaccinated. It is therefore important that we are all part of ACT Accelerator and the COVAX initiative to ensure that the more vulnerable countries will receive vaccines to fight the virus. At the same time, we can always do more, and we will talk amongst ourselves of how not only to invest money to protect the most vulnerable countries, but also to ensure that safe and effective vaccines that is approved by the World Health Organization can get to countries in need.
Bill?
Yes, on a related matter, the World Health Organization is calling on wealthy countries to begin redistributing their secured vaccine supplies to COVAX as soon as they've vaccinated their health workers and older people. Is that something Canada would consider?
We know that it is extremely important to vaccinate the most vulnerable quickly, and we've seen the tremendous efforts that provinces, territories, and all Canadians have made in terms of beginning that vaccination process for our most vulnerable. We know there is still much more to do in Canada on getting our most vulnerable vaccinated, but absolutely, once we've vaccinated the most vulnerable, we should also look at the most vulnerable around the world. It is part of our collective responsibility, and that is an ongoing conversation that the G7 is leading on.
Merci. Prochaine question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Lina Dib, La Presse canadienne. À vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur.
Good day, Mr. Trudeau. On Monday, measures for the mandatory quarantining in hotels will come into force, and the system the government has put in place, a phone system, is not working at all today. So I wonder how you're going to resolve this. Are you going to push back the implementation date, or we put in place some of the strongest measures in the world to protect Canadians? Since the beginning, we had put in place a 2-week mandatory quarantine. It started in March while stopping non-essential travel and travelers from entering Canada. We added measures, particularly with the arrival of new variants. We are very concerned, and we must do everything we can to protect Canadians when a new system comes into play. There are always challenges when it comes to the implementation, but I can tell you that we will do everything we can to ensure that we keep Canadians safe as a priority, and that arrival tests will be done, and that people can be kept safe until we get the negative result that we all expect to have. So you're telling me that even travelers, if they can't get a reservation at a hotel, as is required under the measure that came into force that on Monday, and the National Assembly in Quebec had asked you to delegate it to the government of Quebec the power to ban handguns. Is that something you're considering? Just to clarify, Lena, our officials are working very hard to ensure that the quarantine system is in place by Monday, and we will be able to communicate with Canadians with regard to the instructions on how to comply with those measures. Second, obviously, our government strongly believes in the importance of tightening gun control. That is why, since last May, we banished assault weapons in Canada. It's now illegal to use them, sell them, purchase them, transfer them, and based on the measures announced this week, we are implementing additional measures to protect Canadians and tighten controls. We will continue to work with the provinces, municipalities, and anyone to continue to tighten gun control. We know that there are some provinces that have indicated that they are not interested in this. However, I congratulate Quebec for its intentions, and we are looking forward to working with Quebec and any other jurisdiction that wants to continue to tighten gun control.
Sir Tom Perry, CBC. You said you spoke to the premiers about not opening too soon. Did you tell any of the premiers that they are doing that they are opening too soon in the face of these variants? And on vaccines, did you get any reassurances from the provinces that they're ready for this surge in vaccines, or did you offer them any further support in doing that?
First of all, as I've said many, many times, the job of the federal government is to be there to support the provinces in the very difficult decisions they need to make. Whether it's to be there to support Main Street with the CEBA or the wage subsidy, initiatives to support families, to make sure that if people do have to stay home, they will be supported. We made a promise to have Canadians' backs, and we will continue to do that, including with the new measures extending EI and sickness benefits that demonstrate that this pandemic isn't over yet, and we're going to keep supporting people. We know that the numbers are coming down across the country, which is a good thing, which means that the efforts, the tremendous efforts and sacrifices that Canadians have been making have been working. We're seeing fewer deaths, fewer hospitalizations, and that's a good thing, and we can all be reassured that we're able to do this. At the same time, there is a very real concern about what the variants can do. We saw in Newfoundland just how quickly things spread. We saw in the senior center in Barrie just how rapidly these variants can run through an area. We need to make sure that even as provinces look at loosening up certain restrictions, that other restrictions are kept in, and that there is an ability to both respond quickly when variants appear, and also an ability to use rapid tests as a way of screening the population much more regularly to catch these variants and to catch outbreaks as soon as they happen. Whether it's enhancements to the COVID alert app that's going to feature QR codes that'll help with better catching of outbreaks, whether it's regular screenings done at workplaces or in schools or in seniors residences. These are the kinds of things we talked about last night as being the way we're going to make it through the next 6 months, six to 8 weeks until we get into spring and more mass vaccinations. The federal government and the provinces will continue to work very closely on moving forward on all the different outcomes we need, including and especially making sure we're vaccinating people rapidly. I highlighted and have highlighted a number of times the magnitude of the big lift we're going to face as our vaccine deliveries shift into the millions and millions of vaccine doses arriving in Canada, which means the provinces will need to be ready, and the federal government stands ready to help to get those doses into people's arms as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And I have been reassured many times by the provinces that they have that well in hand, but we will, of course, stand ready to work with them on making sure that it's done in the best possible way for Canadians.
We are seeing clearly that the measures that we have had in place for a number of weeks now are working. We are seeing the number of cases and the numbers going down. The number of hospitalizations is dropping. The number of deaths and tragedy is dropping as well. This is a good thing. So we can be confident that the measures that we have in place for the past few weeks have been working. At the same time, we have to be concerned because of these new variants which are here. They are a real concern for us. As in Newfoundland, we have seen how quickly it can spread. So we must be prepared with new tools. I think that at the same time as the provinces are starting to look at changing some of the measures, we need to add others. More tests, for example, more rapid response tests when there is an outbreak in a specific area. We will be there to work with the provinces on the measures that they decide are necessary, as we have done since the very beginning. The provinces need to make very difficult decisions with our financial support measures for companies, for individuals and families. We are making things a little easier for the provinces to make the right decisions, but obviously it's a very difficult situation for everyone. We're all tired of it. We're frustrated. We want to be able to see the end of COVID-19. We need to hang on. And my priority is to continue to be here and to work with the provinces to get through this.
Prime Minister Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. I just want to talk to you about your gun legislation for a moment. You said 2 years ago that if provinces took steps to stop municipalities from enacting a handgun ban, that you had levers that you could use to stop that. What are those levers? Did you talk to the premiers about it in your call yesterday, and are you prepared to use them?
I think it's very, very clear that there are a number of municipalities, particularly big cities across this country, that very much want to be able to bring in more controls on firearms, particularly handguns, within their city limits. This is something we committed to giving the municipalities powers to do in our last election campaign, and with the legislation moving forward this week, we're doing exactly that. This is, of course, on top of strengthened rules and regulations around firearms that will apply across the country, but we recognize that certain cities and municipalities will want to go further. So we are glad to work with them and give them the capacity to bring in strong bylaws that will be backed up by federal and even criminal penalties for people who don't align with that. Unfortunately, we have seen that there are certain provinces that do not want to strengthen gun control within their borders. And we're going to have conversations with municipalities that want to do it when they find themselves in provinces that don't want to strengthen gun control on the measures we can take going forward. But I'm not going to get ahead of those conversations. We have moved forward on enabling cities to be able to ban handguns within their limits, and we expect them to be able to do that.
And also on COVAX, you said today that you're working with the G7 to try and maybe look at getting vulnerable people in other countries vaccinated, that it's something you're committed to doing. Would not giving up Canada's doses from COVAX be the first step to doing that? You've said we're getting more doses in the spring. 1.9 million doses doesn't seem like it would do a lot given that. So why are we still taking these doses, and at what point are you going to decide to not take them?
The COVAX facility was created as a way to ensure that the most vulnerable countries in the world have access to vaccines that they might not otherwise be able to pay for. And the mechanism with which it was created was that as wealthier countries pay into COVAX to ensure vaccines for themselves, there are also vaccines to be given to developing countries. We will make decisions in the best interests of Canadians every step of the way. We will make sure we are vaccinating vulnerable Canadians as a priority. That's what Canadians expect. But Canadians also understand well that we don't get through this pandemic anywhere without getting through it everywhere. And that's why we remain committed to COVAX and why we will continue to look at and work with our partners around the world on ensuring that we can get more doses to developing countries and vulnerable populations more quickly around the world.
Bonjour.
Radio Canada. Just to come back to my colleague's question, isn't it a bit contradictory to say that there's public health telling us that we could have 20,000 cases by the end of April? Those are the worst predictions we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic. And on the other hand, provinces are loosening up their restrictions and opening up cinemas and theaters. I think that that's a contradiction. I think that every step the provinces have and continue to make appropriate decisions. We are in a situation where the cases numbers are dropping across the country. Canadians are doing the right things and adopting the right habits, making important sacrifices to stop the spread. But every week, at every stage, we learn better ways and new ways of protecting ourselves. We learn what is effective, what is dangerous. And I have confidence in the provinces with regard to what they are doing. And the federal government is here to assist them. We are here to deliver millions of rapid tests because we know that increasing the number of tests done in workplaces and schools, hospitals, and everywhere is a way to catch outbreaks quickly and to not have to introduce more restrictive measures that will affect everyone. So this is a new phase that we are entering. I saw in the conversations last night that the provinces are taking this very seriously. They are very aware of the dangers of the variants, and they continue to seek a balance. As I said from the beginning, the federal government is not here to judge the efforts being made by the provinces. The federal government is rather here to assist and to ensure that the impact of those decisions is the right one, and that people who are facing difficulties as a result of those decisions are able to put food on the tables and pay their rent and get through this. Second question with regard to official languages now. You're tabling today your working document. There will be an expert committee that will look at it for 60 days. Is this realistic to have a bill tabled by the summer? Obviously, it's been more than 50 years since the creation of the Official Languages Act. Our society has changed considerably over the decades, and we need to adopt new tools. We recognize that even with all the advancements when it comes to protecting the official languages across the country, we need to do more to protect French in Quebec and across the country. That is why we really want to work with experts, with the minority language communities, the provinces and the territories to see the best measures to protect French and both official languages. We will do the necessary work to ensure the bill will move forward in the right way, but it will take a lot of work. There is a lot of work to be done to refine our project in this very ambitious white bill.
Oliver with CTV National News. On Monday, Parliament will vote on the Conservatives' motion to declare the actions China is taking against the Uyghurs a genocide. Will this be a free vote for your caucus, and will you vote, and if so, how?
We are, of course, extremely concerned with the situation around human rights in Xinjiang. We have expressed many times our apprehension and our disagreement with what is going on. We've taken careful note of conclusions drawn by experts around the world, including findings of crimes against humanity and genocide. And we need to move forward, not just as a country, but as a world, on recognizing the human rights violations that are going on in China. This morning at our G7 call, we talked about China. We talked about this issue. We talked about the need to be coordinated in our way forward. This is an issue that matters deeply to me, to all Canadians, and we will continue to work with our partners and allies on taking it seriously. We're still reflecting very carefully on the best path forward for Canada, and certainly we recognize that moving forward multilaterally will be the best way to demonstrate the solidarity of Western democracies and the values shared by billions of people around the world that are extremely concerned and dismayed by reports of what's going on in Xinjiang.
Respectfully, sir, that doesn't answer any of my questions. Will it be a free vote? Will you be voting? And if so, how?
Nous sommes très préoccupés.
We are very concerned by the situation in Xinjiang. For a number of years, we have been raising these considerations with regard to the Uyghurs in Western China. This morning, during the G7 conversation, we stressed the importance of collaborating and coordinating on our approach, and we clearly heard around the world very terrible stories of what is happening in Xinjiang. Very clear allegations of crimes against humanity, even genocide. It is our duty to take a coordinated approach, not just as a country alone, but as an international community that condemns these actions. And that is the point that I raised this morning in my conversation in the G7. As a country, we have to think of the best way to move forward. We will take the measures in due course.
Thank you. That concludes today's press conference.
Merci tout le monde.